Well, I played through Baldur's Gate 2 as well, including Throne of Baal. And I totally see why it became such a classic. The story is epic. It's much more, say it, involved than the first game. Lots bigger world, I think. I didn't measure it, but including the expansion, definitely bigger. The dungeons were much better designed. Like in the first game, you'd have some that were just teeny, like labyrinths with teeny tiny passages through them that you can barely just navigate, and all very basic in design. And here you had like real, ran the word, I don't know, they were all different and pretty, definitely pretty for the time. There is a downside though, and that is the fucking combat. Holy shit! The further into the game, the worse it got. Primarily because in higher levels, there's just... it becomes frustrating to fight for several reasons. Like, enemies become super resistant to all my spells for some reason. Like, I had level 9 spells that I got from like the special past level 20 abilities, and enemies would just resist them. Like, what's even the point? Also, when enemies cast spells, they would sometimes cast like a billion different defenses on themselves, a billion disables on me. Even when I managed to kill them, I then have to wait for like 2 minutes of real time for the fucking disables to wear off, because how long a disable lasts is often depends on the level of the caster. So if I'm fighting like level 20 something enemies, I then have to wait around for ages for the stupid disables to end. And yeah, my spells barely did anything to them, so my casters were relegated to summoners and buffers. Good thing I had 3 warriors, 3 fighters in my party. Armed with plus 1 billion weapons, they could kill most things. But even then, a lot of the time, they're like hitting something. I see in the attack log, I see the attack roll, and then nothing. Just no damage. Like, there were times when I figured out that the opponent was supposed to be invisible, but somehow I could still see it. Like, there were times when enemies would become properly invisible, but I guess when they attack me, I can kind of see them, but they're still invisible. I don't know. I think that was just one of the things. A lot of the time, they were also just like immune to attacks for like a while. Most fights I eventually won when their defenses just expired, and then I could kill them. I played almost all the game on core rules difficulty. I turned it down to easy at the almost at the end, slightly before Balthazar. I did one of the enclaves on core rules, and then in the other I switched to easy because it just got so tiresome fighting enemies that operate on rules I never really understood, that can disable my whole party. And I could maybe shield 1 or 2 of my party with like defensive spells, but in no universe could I do that to the whole party. Basically, it came down to sandbagging the enemies with summons until my buffed up fighters could kill them. uh, like I didn't have a problem in the first game with how you could sort of just randomly explode at the start because somebody criticaled you and all it took is that one hit. Because then I could just load and try again until I succeed. But if each time, like often the bosses would monologue before fight, and then during the fight they like cast a time stop, and then I have to just sit there for like 20 seconds until they're done with that. Then they disable half my party, and yeah, it was. I would say the combat was over designed, and at the same time poorly designed. It was like poorly over designed. There was way too much going on, and none of it was fun to play past the point where it got too much. So yeah, I mean, I'm still happy I played the game. I wouldn't, taking into account its age, it's like still fine. I think it's worth playing for the story, even just all the history of a genre. This is just it's huge hallmark of. But yeah, the combat did not age well. Everything else did. Quests were cool, characters. They had much better party members. They're way more fleshed out than in the first game, and there's like fewer of them, I think. Although maybe I just missed a lot of them in the world. I pretty soon decided what party I wanted and just stuck with that. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have stuck with that, because another thing that got incredibly annoying was party members repeating their voice lines just randomly. Not like on commands or during fights or whatever. They just had these lines that they would keep shouting every few minutes. Sometimes over cutscenes even, or dialogues where something important is happening. Suddenly Minsk is shouting about how we are all heroes, hamsters and rangers and everyone. We like, oh fuck you, shut the fuck up. And there was no option to turn that off. I could only turn all of voice off, but a lot of the game dialogues, well, the main ones were actually voice acted, so I wanted to hear that. Voice acting doesn't age. That was done really well. Yeah. I don't even know if I want to give this a rating. It was such a... like, I'm super ambivalent about this. Because the story and characters and quests and everything was so good. And the combat was such impossible garbage. But oh well. Now I have experienced this piece of history. I can go play something else.